was a really tough time for me to get that belt because of the AJ situation. The fans are turning on the office, and like, who's the sort of representation of this new direction and sort of decision making? Yeah. It's me. That day, that moment in time, like, the eyes and ears of the whole world were on us, you know, in pro wrestling. I can't do any more than that.
Well, sir, good to see you. Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's very clear after spending some time here at your house, and thank you for inviting me in here.
You're welcome, yeah.
Very clear that this is not a gimmick for Mickie James. There are horses over there.
Yeah, well, I was telling you before we started recording, you know, she's been around horses her whole life. She showed them. She's got a whole box full of ribbons and trophies and, you know, all sorts of stuff upstairs. And yeah, it's not a gimmick. We live the life here.
Did you ever think as a kid growing up in England that you would be living on a horse farm just outside of Nashville, Tennessee one day?
Well, no, probably not. But at the same time, I grew up in the country too. I mean, I grew up in the countryside in England. I was from Norfolk, which is a very rural area. You know, my father worked in agriculture. So I've been around this. You know, I'm certainly more comfortable in a rural sort of country environment for the most part. And where we are here is, you know, kind of ideal for us because we're close enough to the city, close enough to all the things we want, but we still have acreage and space and
that's beautiful.
Peace. Yeah, thank you.
It's very beautiful.
Yeah, we're very blessed.
I was wondering if you would answer the door here wearing a suit, or if we would get casual, Nick Aldis.
Yeah, sorry, it's 100 degrees today.
I think it's higher than that.
It's very hot, and I was in the pool earlier, so I do my morning swim when it's days like this. I get for my cardio. I take Dee to school. I do my morning swim, and then it's usually gym clothes for me. Because if I wasn't doing this with you now, that's probably where I would be, or at least have been. So yeah, gym clothes when I'm at home.
Yeah, how are you feeling? Because you put it out not long ago that your back was giving you some problems.
It was an injury.
Okay.
Like you know, I mean, look, I'm not about to say that. You know, I'm sure I have any number of underlying long-term issues like any wrestler who's been doing it for, you know, 15 years would have. But no, I had an actual back injury. I can't remember the thing that I injured, but it was the way that they described it was like a sheet, there's a thin sheet of muscle, like near your lower back that can sometimes just get sort of strained and inflamed. So while it felt like a disc issue, and I'm, you know, I've had MRIs and stuff like that to rule all that out, because of course the first thing you start thinking of is, oh God, like you know, it's a disc, or it's this, or it's that, right? And by the time I went, I'm not alone. I'm not like most wrestlers, I would say, in this sense that by the time we go to the doctor, it's like
too late.
Well, it's serious. If we're going to a doctor, it's because it hasn't gone away with ice and, you know, some Advil or whatever, right? So
because you can't be falling now, you know, as part of your job, and it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, and so I pulled out, and I take a lot of pride in the fact that in most of my career, I think, with the exception of when I tore my bicep in Mexico, there's not been many times where I've missed shots like from being hurt. And this was the first time where I sort of had to call up a couple of, you know, promoters, one in Chicago and one in Puerto Rico, and say, I'm sorry, I just can't make it, because it was just every time I'd worked the 2 weeks before. One weekend I was in England, and then North Carolina, and you know, the next day I was just like, every time after the match, the next day I was just like, struggling to get out of bed, struggling to get dressed and all that, and I was like, whatever this is, it's not, you know, this isn't smart. Turns out that it was actually just like huge amount of inflammation that was just getting aggravated, you know, from this injury. So, you know, just took some life. Feel
so
great.
You're good now?
Yeah, 100%.
Because, you know, you've seen them. There's the rumors that you're working backstage with WWE. Then I saw a tweet. You retweeted something about WWE ticket sales for WrestleMania, and I went, oh, this is a thing.
Well, you know, I thought that would help them, because, you know, they need all the help they can get with selling 92,000 tickets in like one day.
All because of that one tweet.
Yeah. That's one of the most fascinating things of being there is like listening to Kevin Dunn and Hunter break down the the numbers, because they break down the numbers and stuff, and it's like, holy cow! It's just this stuff, but it's like when you hear it broken down sort of internally like that, you just kind of go, man alive, this is this is the real deal. This is the big time.
Well, it's they're focused a lot on business. You know.
Yeah, I mean, they're commercially they're absolutely untouchable. I mean, wrestling is subjective in a lot of things, and people can have their favorites or say they like the way that one company does this or that or whatever. But like with WWE, there's one thing that you absolutely can't deny, and that's their commercial success. I mean, their profitability is just astonishing.
Lots more to get to during this conversation, but first, hit a DDT on that subscribe button, and a big thank you to Mudwater for sponsoring this episode. Someone DM'd me the other day and they were like, I heard you talking about Mudwater. Are you actually like drinking mud? Like, is there mud in that cute little dino mug you've got there? No, Mudwater is a coffee alternative made of 4 adaptogenic mushrooms. You can see all of the ingredients right there on the side of the can. If coffee's just not doing it for you anymore, but you still drink it because of the routine, maybe you just wake up every morning, you have to drink that coffee, or you drink it because you love the taste of it, but you're not getting the energy that you're looking for, give Mudwater a try. It's a fraction of the caffeine of a cup of coffee, and it gives you a steady energy, like without that crash, that fall off that you can so often get with coffee. It's so good. It's something that I drink every single day, and I know that you're going to love it too. You're gonna love the taste, and you're gonna love the way that it makes you feel. Go to mudwater.com/CVV. That's MUDWTR.com/CVV and use the code CVV15 at checkout. You'll get 15% off your order of Mudwater.
Well, and as a publicly traded company, we can all look at,
Yep.
How much money are they making?
And you can own stock.
This is true.
Which I do. That stock's been very good to me. And let's face it, with the way the stock market's been lately, it's like having like some strong stock like that's like just doing nothing but kicking ass is like, it's a great thing to have in your portfolio. So yeah.
I owned that stock in 2019. I owned that stock at like $55. I sold it at like 60 something. I went, look at me. Oh my gosh, that's like a 10% increase. Yeah, it would have doubled if I still hung on
where's
to it.
it at now? 100?
110?
110?
Around 110? Yeah. So what exactly is the role that you have with WWE?
None at the moment.
Oh, that's right. Just retweeting about WrestleMania.
Yeah, social media signal booster. No. I'm just they just invited me to come and see how everything works and shadow as a producer and see and just sort of be part of the meetings and oversee the whole the whole television operation, which is, I mean, I've done a lot. I've worn a lot of hats. I think people who have followed my career, particularly in the last few years, know that in addition to wrestling, I was wearing a lot of hats behind the scenes, at my last place. And so I certainly don't feel like it's a completely new sort of situation for me. Having said that, there's pro wrestling and then there's WWE. So just taking in the sheer sort of volume of the operation and just the number of people involved and the scale of everything is like, just that alone is the sort of has been the basis of like my time so far. But it's all very much a sort of a handshake situation at the moment. Very much a, hey, why don't you come in and see how all this works, see if you like it, see it. Like, I will say this, they've been very, very good to me and very, very accommodating as far as, they've said, look, this is as much about whether you like it, now where that goes, no, I don't know. It's, and I'm okay with that. Like, it's not, it's tough with the internet, and social media, because people want to put this sort of definitiveness on everything and this finality, like, oh, that's it.
Yeah.
He's with
Nick
WWE.
Aldis is backstage at Raw.
He's with WWE. Yeah. That's it. Game over. Like, he's like, And so now, you know, people, oh, are you not wrestling anymore? Have you retired? Are you not wrestling? I mean, even the guys, even the boys are saying that, like, are you done wrestling? You know, and it's sort of like, well, everyone slow down. Like, everyone just, you know, just.
Well, I think that people go, back injury, pulled out of these dates, now in a producer role.
The timing of that was
the
timing of that, I can accept and concede that. And I knew that even when I did it, you know, I was kind of like, man, the timing of this isn't great, because now people are going to put two and two together and go, oh, you must be injured and you must have a back problem and can't wrestle anymore. Not the case.
So you can still wrestle.
100%. Mm-hmm. I just took a couple more dates recently. You know, I have a few dates in September. Like, I know that I know Mickie and I are doing a show in Canada at a Indian reservation, and I know that there's another show in Ohio that we're both doing, and you know, so I mean, I've had stuff on the books, and I've already, and I told Bret that I would whenever he has a date for Calgary, that because I'm the Stu Hart, you know, champion for his son's promotion for Dungeon Wrestling. So it's like, I was like, look, I'll always be there for that, you know. So it's not like, you know, that's the frustrating part, right? Is when you just go, you literally go and try something and just go and, you know, try it on, see if you like it, right? And next thing you know, it's like, oh, that's it, you know.
You know better than anybody. This is a business of perception.
Yeah.
And perception is reality. I mean, in general, but especially in pro wrestling.
Yeah.
So when people connect those dots for themselves, and you're certainly not doing that yourself, they connect those dots. They go, well, that's the story that I now believe about Nick.
Yeah. Well, look, and everything could change next week or the week after or anything like that. But I guess to put a pin in this, because obviously there's only so much we can discuss.
Sure.
And it's not like I'm trying to be secretive or anything. It's not that interesting. It's just like, they called me and said, hey, how would you feel about coming in and, you know, seeing how things operate on the production level and you know, shadowing the producers.
Yeah.
And I was like, that would be interesting. That would be fun to see how that works. Even if nothing comes of it, or even if I do, and again, I have to make this point. They also were very open with me about it and said, look, if you don't want to do it, like, if you're not cool with this, like, absolutely no hard feelings. Yeah. You know, like, if you don't go, nah, this ain't for me, or I'm not ready to do this yet, that's totally cool too. I may as well say it. Obviously, I would love the other thing. But until that day comes or doesn't, you know, I'm going to explore other opportunities, because ultimately that is absolutely something that I would want to do in the end. It's, you know, the question it will be, I guess, whether or not I'm ready to do it now, you know, and we don't know that yet. I don't.
Look, if there's talk of WrestleMania being in London one day, you know, first ever UK WrestleMania, you might want to be there.
They're definitely going to do that. I mean, that's going to happen for sure.
It sure feels like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't send out John Cena to gee everybody up about that without without having some sort of acknowledgement that, like, one way or another they're going to do it at some point. So yeah, I mean, that's, yeah. Look, what do you want me to say? Like, you know,
yeah,
there's no way to talk about this stuff without coming across as like fake and phony, right? Where you sort of go, oh boy, I sure would, you know, I think I would be happy with whatever, and you know. Or coming across like a complete arrogant douche and being like, it should be me. Of course it should be me. All I will say is that to you and to a lot of the talent that I've been, you know, interacting with, and to the fans, you know, many of them who have said very nice things, very positive things with regards to me, you know, and my future, right? Ultimately, it doesn't really matter what you say to me. You know, I appreciate it. I always have and always will. But it doesn't really matter what you say to me. It matters what they hear. It matters what you say to, you know, and ultimately, it's a subjective thing. It's going to come down to, you know, one guy.
I would feel like, you know, with your wife being Mickie, you've spent time backstage. You kind of understand.
Actually, no. It's funny. I was having this conversation the other day with someone at TV. They were like, I said, you know, like the first show I went to was in Minneapolis. And I said, it's actually the first time I've ever been backstage at a WWE event.
That's shocking.
Yeah. I mean, I've been to the Hall of Fame.
Sure.
Right. And they were always very nice to me at the Hall of Fames too, like in the sense that they would say, hey, as far as you're concerned, you know, you're one of the boys, like, don't feel like you have to, you know, do anything different or anything like that. So, you know, just be sort of respectful and careful and everything. But yeah, no, as far as like, I never went for a tryout, like never did extra stuff, you know, never did like dark match, like none of that stuff, because I wasn't ready to do that, you know, when that particular opportunity would have presented itself. I wasn't ready to do it then. And then I got picked up by TNA, and then I was there for, you know, years.
Yeah.
And then after that, it was sort of like, by the time I left there, I was kind of like established.
Yeah.
So now I'm sort of, you know, now I sort of fall into a different bracket, right? Like I'm not I'm not like a developmental prospect, I guess, or something like that. It's like I've been world champion and, you know, stuff. So
any wrestling fan knows your name now.
Well,
come on.
No, that's not true.
That is true.
WWE, you know,
there may be WWE fans that just watch WWE.
Yeah, exactly.
But I would imagine that they would be like, oh, I at least know who that person is.
Within the world of wrestling fans who follow the broader picture of pro wrestling, yes. I mean, I guess, yeah, I'm you know, widely known, right?
This episode is sponsored by Blue Chew. It is not a coincidence that these lights behind me are blue. Blue Chew is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but it's in chewable tablets, and it's a fraction of the cost. Now you may be saying, I don't need anything like that, and I'm not suggesting that you do, but it may just kick things up just a little bit in the bedroom for you. If you've ever had a friend talking about how good things are and can be when you take Blue Chew, now is the time to jump in on this. Your first month is free. You just have to pay $5 for shipping when you use the promo code CVV at BlueChew.com. That's right, your first month for free. Just pay $5 for shipping when you go to BlueChew.com. Try it out. I think you will be rather pleasantly surprised.
You said just such an interesting thing the last time we sat down, and my goodness, so much has changed. That was I think January 2020, right before the world came to an end. It was in Atlanta.
Yeah.
You said something so interesting, and it stuck with me. You're like, depending on who you ask, I am either overrated,
right,
or I am underrated,
right.
And then you went into it, and I went, my goodness, that's so true.
Yeah.
Depending on who you ask, you're the best, or you're the best kept secret.
Yeah.
Do you still feel that way?
I guess. The point I was making when I said that was just that, like, it's subjective, right? Like, but wrestling fans, particularly the very opinionated ones, God love them, you know, they tend to conflate their opinion with fact. Right? So it's sort of like everybody knows that insert name here is the best wrestler in the world, and it's like, do they all know that? Like, because I think that's what you think, right? Like, the same way that, you know. A lot of the time they'll qualify it with that, like, oh, everybody knows this is a thing, or
people do this with movies too. Like it's subjective. Everybody loves Pulp Fiction. That's clearly Tarantino's best film. Right. It's like
the best way to sum this up is to go, who's the GOAT? Because some people will argue to death that it's Flair. Some people will argue to death that it's Hogan, Rock, Austin, Bret.
The list goes on and on. Yeah.
It's subjective.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, hey, there's a case for Cena. There's a case, you know what I mean? There's a case for all kinds, like, but there are some people who you would say Cena to, and they'd be like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
The same way that there, you know, believe it or not, there were people from different eras who would have scoffed at you saying that about Flair, right? Like, because everybody has their own sort of, you know, definition and interpretation of, like, what great is. Like, well, who drew the most money, or like who had the best matches, or who, you know, or who got the most 5-star matches, you know, whatever, right? Sorry, I don't want to dig in a heavy subject. I don't want to sense it. I don't want to touch a nerve, you know.
So it's Will Ospreay. Great. Okay.
Hey, I love Will.
Me too. I think he's the best right now.
He is. I mean, there's a very good, certainly in ring. Certainly is an in-ring performer.
This is maybe
in the discussion.
This is maybe why people do the Mount Rushmore, because they can go, oh, like, you pick 4, and at least I can agree with one of those people. Oh, good. We have one overlap. I hate the Mount
Rushmore question. God, I hate that question, man, because it's like, because you just feel like you're slighting somebody.
Because you can only pick 4.
Yeah.
Someone was like, because I'm obviously from Canada, very proud to be Canadian. Someone was like, what's your Canadian Mount Rushmore? And I'm like, oh, I can't do this.
That's easier.
Is it?
Yeah.
But then you're going to leave off some. I mean,
well,
sure, Bret's on everybody's. I would imagine Edge is on everybody's.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well,
Gene Kiniski.
Chris Jericho.
Yeah.
You know, then the list can go
and
on.
That's it. And suddenly, wait, you're at 4. That's it. Sorry.
You're like, okay, wow. But now who did you slight?
Right.
Yeah.
Owen.
Oh,
right.
There's a lot of people you'd
Leo
be
Burke.
Roddy Piper.
Yeah, shit.
Jeez.
There you go.
I mean,
already
look how many people we've
already,
upset.
Right, exactly. Already, it's like
upset.
Nick Aldis says Roddy Piper isn't on the Mount Rushmore of Canadian wrestlers. Then by the end of the day, it's like Nick Aldis says Roddy Piper was terrible, but the worst wrestler ever.
I remember running into you at some point during the pandemic when NWA wasn't operating. You know, you're still the NWA champion at that point. I'm like, you're going to be the NWA champion forever at this point. I mean,
I think some people felt that way.
When are you going to, defend it if there's no shows happening? Yeah. But does it feel like when you look back at your career right now, it's certainly not done. Is that something you're super proud of?
Absolutely.
Yeah. What, 1,043 days?
Yeah. I think that sounds right.
1,000+ days.
Yeah. I'll take your word for it. Yeah, look, there's an asterisk with it for sure because of the pandemic and everything like that. But yeah, look, I look at that as it's certainly it's sort of a definition of my career in a lot of ways. You know, a lot of my body of work is going to be tied to what I did with that championship, and a lot of people would say what I did for that championship, because obviously it was not in a great place prior. I was just very fortunate and glad that I was, through all the various different things that happened, that I could have this sort of opportunity to do something that I felt like had very little risk, because it's like, if, for example, when I won the TNA World title, right, like the company looking back, it was a really tough time for me to get that belt because of the AJ situation, because they lowball AJ. They can't they kind of, from what I understand, like the offer they made to him was a bit of a slap in the face. And that backfired hugely, and the company was, vilified. The fans are turning on the office, and like, who's the sort of representation of this new direction and sort of decision making? Yeah. It's me. And I'm already green, and I'm already like, they're already sort of rolling the dice by, we're gonna pull the trigger with this guy. Like, he's been here, he's like earned his spot, he's like young, and he's coming up, and he's got the support of like top guys and stuff. We're gonna go with it. We're gonna pull the trigger. Problem is that like now they're going, oh, we don't get AJ and we get this guy, right? And I can completely understand that. And so as a 26-year-old kid or whatever I was, it's like, I don't know how to process that then. I look back at it now and I can articulate it, but at the time, I didn't handle it well, right? So it's like, there can be a blessing and a curse, because now you're under this microscope, and suddenly it's like, oh, so in a much less significant way, it's sort of like being the president, right? Like, everything that goes wrong is now your fault, right? Like, oh,
because you're the face,
right? Oh, look, under your, well, with him as champion, like this is bad. Actually, like, if you look back, like the house show business went up a little bit, and the ratings held pretty steady, like when I had the belt. But of course, that didn't fit. That didn't fit the narrative.
Everybody in TNA goes, well, it's not like the numbers you guys did in 2010, 2011, 3 million people a week. What's like, television ratings are never going to be like that.
Yeah, but I think, all I'll say is that the really significant drop-offs at TNA, I was long gone as champion by the time that happened. Anyway, but my point is, when I get the NWA World title, it's like, can't really get any lower. You know, it can't really have that much worse of a perception than it currently had. Not in the sense it had a bad one, it just had no perception, right? It had no presence, it had no buzz, no interest. So for me, when you look back, I think I won it in December of 17. So then to fast forward to All In, which was September 1st, 18, it's like 9 months to go from where it was to
All In.
For that moment in time, that day, Cody and I were talking about this the other day. That day, that moment in time, like the eyes and ears of the whole world were on us, you know, in pro wrestling. Yeah. And it was like, I can't think of any, I can't do any more than that, you know?
Yeah.
Right. Like if your assignment is, your job is, if you get a championship, your job is to create interest in that championship so that then eventually when someone beats you for it, it's a big deal. It's a box office. It's a money match. I can't think of any better example of like, I did my job, you know, than that particular run. And then obviously, you know, got it back and then had a long run with it because of, you know, all the other circumstances. But it's like, of course I'm proud of that body of work. I mean, I redefined that championship and that championship redefined me. That
All In match with Cody was kind of the proof of concept for AEW. You know, that worked, that, you know, 3 months later, AEW's announced. What kind of pressure did you feel going into that?
I also would say that it was a proof of concept for Cody as well.
That's a great
Cody
point.
that you see now in WWE.
That's a great point.
Yeah. But the pressure I had was I had to make sure that I wasn't just a guy there to facilitate Cody's moment, right? Like if we hadn't done all the things we needed to do to really get people genuinely going like, I don't know, maybe, will they? I don't know. Like if everyone had just thought like, you know, here comes, like it's obvious.
Yeah.
I don't think it would have had that. And I've said this before, so anyone who's heard me talk about this is probably, you know, ready to switch this off. But for me, I always felt like the eruption at the beginning of the match was sort of their way of kind of acknowledging like my contribution to it, right? Like, because it was sort of that thing of, we think we know what's happening here, or we know what we want, but we appreciate that you've made this matter, right? Because if it had just been a coronation, you know, I think I would have backfired on Cody, right? Because when we got there, we'd created enough doubt and put enough credibility on me, and I owe Cody a lot for that. Because by the time we got to the bell, people believed that it could go either way. It wasn't this thing of like, well, he's obviously going to beat this guy, right?
Yeah.
Like they went, I don't know, actually.
That was a goosebump moment. Like yeah, you guys are staring at each other. The crowd's going crazy.
You can't. Well, the thing, and again, Cody and I talked about this the other day. We did that with no machine behind us, right? We didn't have this like mastermind team of people with decades of experience of how to create like this buzz and how to promote. Like we did it with a YouTube show.
Yeah.
And we just sort of, between his belief in himself and my conviction in who I was and what that meant to me and the credibility that we put on the championship and everything like that, and the history, and obviously, look, his father played a huge role in it. But all the way around, again, it's one thing, it's hard to get that sort of moment. I mean, how many can you think of?
I mean, the one that immediately comes to mind is Rock Hogan, of course.
And think of what a huge compliment that is to me to have even have that mention in the same breath, right?
Yeah.
Now you compare like the infrastructure that
of WrestleMania 18,
yeah, right? with like the two biggest stars arguably that have ever existed.
Sure.
To then have like two guys who were in very different places in their careers, but you know, through just sort of conviction and just like a outright belief in what we were doing, we were able to accomplish that with no, I would say no support. That's not fair, because obviously we had Ring of Honor, and we had, you know, Dave Lagana with the NWA. So it was like his work in that, you know, was a huge factor. But in the end, it's like, yeah, like to accomplish that with a, you know, a sold out arena, like that sort of moment. And to think we did this with a YouTube show, man. Like we just got people into this. Like they really care.
Yeah.
You know, that's your job. That's the thing that anyone in our business is striving for.
Yeah.
Is to, can we, you know, because you know how hard it is to accomplish that. And some, you know, a lot of people have great careers and never have that once.
And that may have been an introduction for you to a lot of fans.
Yeah.
And then that, you know, goes on 10 Pounds of Gold into everything with NWA Power.
Yeah.
NWA was riding this huge hot streak, and then the world comes to a screeching halt. And then I feel like there's this thing, there feels like a pre-pandemic NWA that existed, and now a post-pandemic NWA that exists.
Yeah.
And you've talked about just how it feels different now.
Yeah.
And I think that you can also kind of group in there of like you having the championship and you not having the championship also feels different.
Yeah. I mean, look, you know, I've moved on, right? Like it's, and there are people who work there who I care about a lot, and I'm really happy that my contributions to that company sort of facilitated those guys earning a living. But you know, again, there's nothing I really need to say, you know, like the evidence is there for anyone who wants to look. You know, I'm sort of done talking about Billy and that whole thing. It's like, you know, he's sort of, to me, I would just say that he's kind of shown everybody who he is, and that's, you know, that's unfortunate. But I'm certainly not going to spend any more time, you know, saying anything sort of denigrating about him or the company or anything like that. People can make up their own minds, and it looks like a lot of them have, you know, and that's pretty much it.
So with that said,
Yeah.
to return to Impact Wrestling,
Yeah.
which interesting, you go back to Impact Wrestling under your real name.
Yeah.
Did that feel different for you?
100%.
You know,
yeah.
your legacy there was, legacy. See what I did there?
There we go,
Wow. I didn't even do that on purpose. LegacySubs.com.
That's it.
Your legacy there was Magnus.
Yeah.
It wasn't Nick Aldis. Did it feel like in a way you were kind of starting over?
No. It felt like they were acknowledging, you know, all of my story, which is what they did. You know, like we didn't pretend that I was never a Magnus. Do you know what I mean? We did. You know, we put together a really great package. You know, that sort of told my story, I thought, in a really good way. That was like, yeah, he you know, he came here very early in his career, had, you know, a very storied sort of run, culminated in you know, the highest high you could have at that company, world champion. You know, I got to wrestle like legit icons, like Hall of Famers, and then I moved on, and I sort of reinvented myself and went, no, now you're going to meet Nick Aldis, and that's who they met. And by the time I came back, Nick Aldis was who people know, right? Like, so I thought they did that they did a tremendous job of articulating that. And there's a lot of things about the company that, you know, for all intents and purposes, it's basically a different company. You know, there's a few people there who are the same, in working in, you know, pretty much the same positions, but for the most part, it's different owners, you know, virtually different roster.
I think we have
we got a visitor.
We're going to pause right here because there's a knock at the door. So it's time in now. It's time in.
Take two.
We the knock at the door, the doorbell was your lovely wife.
Yes.
Who brought tacos. Thank you, Mickie.
You're welcome. Yeah, everyone loves tacos.
I mean, how could you not love tacos?
What were we talking about?
I think we were talking
Impact.
about your incredible run in Impact. Yeah.
I'll I'll put a bow on it with this. I'll say that might have been the easiest sort of professional arrangement like I've ever had. You know, it was just kind of like, hey, what about we do this? You know, and that sounds great. And that they did a great job of, you know, presenting me as a person of a certain stature, and I felt like I did business, and you know, it was just like all the way around. It just was just very, very easy, and I was really glad to work with Alex Shelley. You know, I've known Patrick a long time, and he was very good to me, you know, early on. So, and I was proud of our match too. Like, I felt like we told a really unique story. Like we were talking about Bret earlier, and it was like, I feel that's the sort of match Bret would have really liked. You know, like this sort of really, like we really thought about all the like the psychology, and really thought about like it was like a chess match, like a real physical chess match. You know? And that's what I always really like to do with matches, particularly if you're on last. Like, I think when you're on, I think this is something that, you know, Roman has become such a master at too, right? It's like, if you're on last, you've got everything to follow. So you've got to do something that just totally takes people out of their normal rhythm. And like, you've got to do something, and you got to take a few risks, and you got to take a few chances of stuff that like might really, really work, or it might be a bit like, what's this? What's happening? But you've got to do something to get everybody off their game. You got to take people out of that natural rhythm of like, okay, well, first comes this, because wrestling fans now, they're conditioned, you know, they know, like, even the most sort of, for lack of a better term, casual fan is still smart. They're still smart to what's going on, right?
Sure.
So you've got to take everybody and sort of have one or two things, or hopefully one real definitive thing that makes them all sort of go, oh, now I don't know where we are. What's happening?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what's like, because now they have to pay attention.
Yeah.
And now they have to go, I don't know where this is going now. Right? Like, you don't want to, you know, I believe in the old Jerry Jarrett adage, like, if you confuse them, you lose them. So I'm not saying confuse them, but I'm saying like you got to do something that throws them off their natural rhythm. So now they're really invested in what's going on, and they can't necessarily predict it.
Yeah.
Like, I have a phrase that I learned from Kenneth Cole, the fashion designer. I heard him in an interview, and it was a business podcast, and the guy asked him something to the effect of, you know, how do you, working in fashion, how do you decide, like, how do you tell people what they want? You've always got to figure out what people want. And Kenneth Cole goes, no, my job isn't to tell people what they want. My job is to give people what they want in a way they weren't quite expecting.
That's great.
I was like, that's pro wrestling booking.
Yeah.
That's pro wrestling.
That's really good.
Most of the time, you know what people want, right? Like, take like All In, right? We all knew what they wanted. We never had a discussion about the finish, right? Like, there was, like, what if I win, brother? You know, what, maybe we'll, you know. But we never had that discussion. We'd never even, like, there was never actually a definitive discussion of, like, would you mind, you know, doing the honor? Like, I was like, don't even talk to me. I know what the, you know.
Yeah.
I know what people want here. We had to give it to them in a way that they, you know, they couldn't predict, and they weren't fully able to, you know, expect and predict. Like, that's your job, is to, you know, give the people what they want in a way that they're not fully expecting.
But with Cody, I feel like everybody wanted him to win at WrestleMania 39.
Well, that's a separate issue.
I feel like the fans are still going to get what they want.
This is the point. I feel weird about discussing too much of this, just because I don't want to feel like I'm trying to, like, step on the magic, right?
Yeah.
But where you were going, I think, is right. It is happening. It's just a very long process, right? Like, it's, you know, it's give the people what they want in a way they weren't expecting. Yeah. This is all part of that. Yeah. Just to, you know. So I don't want to finish. He's going to finish the story, right? Well, if he'd finished the story already, then what would his story be now?
That's a great point. So I recently had Kurt Angle on the show, and I think people forget he was in TNA for 10 years.
Right. Longer than WWE.
Way longer than WWE. Yeah. And I asked him, like, you were there for so long. What in your opinion were the prime TNA years? You were there for 7 years.
Yeah.
What's your answer for you?
Well, I think I came in at the peak.
So like
I came
08?
in 09. I came in I was signed in 08, but I didn't actually start until 09. I feel like 08, 09 was like the peak.
So that's like Hogan and Spike TV?
No, prior to Hogan. Right before Hogan, I think, is peak TNA. I felt like they misjudged. I felt like some of the decisions that were made, you know, after with Eric and Hogan were, you know.
So you're saying still under Russo, right?
If you want to put it like that, yeah, I guess. You know, I think of it more as when there was that balance of Dixie, Jeff Jarrett, you know, Vince, Cornette, Dutch Mantell. Mm-hmm. Like there was a melting pot of philosophies and ideas. Jeff being the sort of wrestling sort of talisman, right? Like the sort of that kept everything pointed in the direction of drawing money or trying to draw money and you know, trying to sort of have payoffs and, you know, trying to sort of build to, you know, significant conclusions. I think Dutch is brilliant at that too. Dutch is such an underrated mind, like behind the scenes of wrestling. He was a fabulous agent, producer, whatever you want to call it. He was a great booker. And I listen to his podcast now because I just love listening to him break down like the business, because he just knows it. Like you just like that way of thinking cannot die out. It's absolutely imperative that people learn from people like Dutch, right? And whether people want to accept it or like it or not, from Cornette. WWE, you know, WWE has Michael Hayes. That's the same, right? Mm-hmm. Michael Hayes, I'll say this at the risk of coming across like a massive brown noser, right? But just in the short time that I've been sort of, you know, privy to some of those discussions, Michael Hayes is such an important voice back there, like, because he just cuts through the people trying to sort of tread carefully and, you know, trying not to, and I'm not saying Michael goes out of his way to like hurt people's feelings. That's not what I mean. But Michael cuts through the chaff, right? And just says, hey, it's got to be like this, you know? And you go, yep. You know, yep, that's it, right? Okay. And I'll say this too, again, at the risk of coming across like a massive suck up, but, you know, Hunter is like, I don't know if people really fully understand just how like sharp he is as far as like a wrestling mind, like finishes and, you know, executing a certain piece of business. It's like people could be sort of kicking something around, and like even as the short time, like I've seen him just immediately go, oh, it's this, and this. And you suddenly go, oh, yeah. You know, like, yeah. And I had this conversation with Regal, and I was sort of explaining that. And I said, like, I like to sort of give myself enough credit to think that, like, I might have thought of that in like 2 hours. You know, like if I'd had enough time to really like flesh it out and like go talk to a few people and like, you know, bounce it around a bit. But it's like he just like had like right there it is, and you go, oh man, you know. So
what are you most proud of from the time you spent in TNA?
I think breaking the glass ceiling. I won the world title. You know, Bret had never done that. Like, and I'm not, you know, the irony is that guys like Dutch or Russo and people who were working behind the scenes back then might laugh at that now, because one of the things I used to say a lot, and I'm sure it drove them crazy, was I would be like, I don't want to be known as a British guy, right? Like, stop, just, you know, it doesn't matter if I'm British. Who gives a shit, you know? Because I'd be like, I don't want to be the token British guy. Like, I just want to be like, I want to be a top guy. Like it doesn't matter where I'm from, right? And then I won the world title, and there was like this outpouring of like love and support from British fans. But like he's like the first British guy to like win a world title, and oh my god, da, 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 da. And I was like, oh yeah, there's sort of, like suddenly you're like all patriotic again, So I think both things can be true, but that. Look, I guess that was part of it that I wasn't really thinking about, and then once it came, I sort of went, "Wow, that is kind of cool." And
it's also how you won it.
Yeah, but to look at
beat Sting.
Well, I beat Jeff Hardy to win it, to get to beat Sting.
Yes.
Well, look, that is, as I was going to say that next. Like that's the other thing, that I will never stop appreciating is that Sting, for whatever reason, like back when when he had no reason to other than to just because he wanted to and because he had a gut feeling, he said, I want to work with that kid, give me him. And it's like, I remember like literally being like, me, and Steve just being like, yeah, I told him I wanted to work with you. And I was just kind of like, okay, holy shit.
Wow.
Right. Like, this is a funny story. So the first time I wrestled Sting was on an episode of Impact, right? And I think I'd been there like 6 months, not even, right? Something like that. And I'm part of the tag team with Doug Williams, I'm part of the British Invasion. So I go out and so Doug comes out with me and I'm stood in the ring and I'm, sort of doing my sort of, heel shtick. And then Sting's music hits, like place goes bonkers or whatever.
Yeah.
And I like, for a minute, I just like forgot where I was and I was just sort of standing there going like, and Doug literally snapped me out of it and went, hey, like,
wow.
Game face, I'm like, and then he's like, game face, all right, go get him sort of thing. And then went, and then got out the ring.
Wow.
Like, cause I think he could see, like, I was like, for a second there, I just like forgot, like, oh shit, I got to go to work here in a second.
Yeah.
That's, that's what it meant to me. And then, Sting also, like allowed me to like, call the match and,
wow.
that sort of, it's like, I look back on it now and go, that was like astonishing, that like I was trusted with that, at 21 or whatever it was.
Wow.
Yeah.
There was someone you worked with in Impact and NWA, Eli Drake,
yeah.
who I've known for years, you've known for years. And now the WWE audience is getting to know just how damn good he is.
Killing it.
Yeah.
I look, it doesn't come as any surprise to me. And I don't think it has come as much of a surprise to anybody who's really like followed his stuff in the last few years. Mm-hmm. I see it as, great inspiration and, there's hope yet, right? Like, cause it's like, dude, he's like literally like on the ascent now, and it could be the run of a lifetime.
Yeah. When I interviewed you last was the day that he cut the now infamous Shoes of a Champion promo.
Oh, right. Yeah.
In Atlanta. See this jacket? Shoes of a Champion. Little did we know, being there, that would be a thing people are talking about now.
Right.
3 years later, I think.
Yeah. Well, like it's like I was saying before, like you got to do something that cuts through the norm and that sort of resonates, and that people it's going to be hard to it's going to be hard to stand out if you're always trying to fit in, you know what I mean? And like with that, it's like take a risk, take chances. Like he took risks, right? And like finally, it's paid off.
What do you think's the biggest risk that you've taken?
Turning down the competition. I hate to sort of make it seem that way, but that is, I just at the time I wasn't ready to walk away from what I was doing. I felt a loyalty to that because I was building something, and this is the other part that I've never really talked about much, but like Tom Latimer was one of my best friends, right? Best man at my wedding. Went through some tough stuff, and has turned his life around, clean and sober for years now, like settled, married, like model citizen, like model employee, one of the best wrestlers in the world right now. And he was about to have a full-time job, you know, with the NWA. And, you know, Camille has a full-time gig, right? And like, there was other guys who got full-time gigs. And if I had walked away at that point, I felt like it would have made things really difficult for them to survive. And that's not me being arrogant and like saying, oh, I wouldn't, it would have, you know, would have fallen apart without me. But at that particular time, it would have been very difficult.
Yeah.
They would have made things very difficult, and that would have meant that those opportunities evaporated for, you know, people I cared about. So I don't regret it, right? Like it's not a, you know, but it was a chance I took because because it was like, you know, the train doesn't always stop twice, right? And I kind of knew that at the time, like this train might leave the station, and you know, and there may not ever be another chance to jump on it, right?
I'm sure it wasn't an easy decision.
It wasn't, but I'm proud of, you know, why did, and I've been met with a lot of like hostility from certain fans about it, like as if somehow I sort of, you know, like it was,
They take it personally.
yeah, right,
Wow.
like it was some sort of, you know, like with us or against us sort of thing, and I you know, it was never about that. It was, I knew that place was going to blow up, right? Like, you know, I mean, because of the momentum of the guys involved. I was part of All In, you know, like I'd seen it, and then to know, oh man, now they're connected with Tony Khan with this incredible amount of resources, and you know, he's clearly like he's going for it, like he's not going to stop. Yeah. So I knew what it was absolutely nothing to do with that. It was 100% personal, you know, for me, because I didn't want to let my people down. That was it.
But I mean, look what you built from that. You know, I think that it's certainly in recent memory, when people think of the NWA Worlds Heavyweight Championship, they think of you. And, and so many people talk about how you made it mean something again.
Right. And that's a huge compliment when you consider the people that have held it.
I mean, come on. Yeah.
And for whatever happens to it now, and, you know, wherever it goes, at least now when the lineage of that championship is discussed, it's like there is this other really significant chapter, right? Yeah. Like after Dory Funk and Jack Briscoe, after Harley Race, after Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat, and, you know, now there's this other really significant chapter, right? Like Aldis and Cody, and, you know, like and then the original NWA Power Run and all that sort of thing. Yeah, so it's obviously in that respect. Look, I've always taken pride in the fact that I'm business. You know, like I don't want to get too sentimental, but at the same time, yeah, like at some point you got to look at your body of work, and that's a big part of mine.
I know you've spent a lot of time with Bret Hart.
Yeah.
Really curious what the big takeaway from spending time with Bret is for you.
Well, it's been a huge honor of my life to get the sort of endorsement of Bret, right? Like I heard him in an interview recently discussing his son's promotion in Calgary, you know, Dungeon Wrestling, and saying like, oh, we've got Nick Aldis, like one of the best wrestlers in the world. And I was just like, oh.
You're like, Bret Hart saying that?
Yeah. Because Bret's like, he's my guy, you know, he's the one. And just getting to talk shop with him, right? And like hear his take on things and hear him discuss things in more detail, and also getting to hear him say things that he wouldn't say on camera, wouldn't say. And look, let's face it, there's not a lot he wouldn't say, but you know, there's still going to be stuff that he's not going to say to anybody except like somebody he trusts in a peer, right? Like, and just, you know, just listening to his philosophy on things and listening to him break down stuff. And, you know, I love going to Calgary to work with them, because it's like I'm getting to go, you know, it'd be like I'm getting to go play football with Pele, you know, or you know, I'm going to go hit with, you know, Babe Ruth, I don't know, some, you know,
Sure, yeah.
right, give me a name, you know, but
Yeah.
and he's going, hey Nick, what do you think of this? You
Yeah.
know, like, I got an idea for your match. Like, he's been thinking about it. Like, he's literally going like, I've got an idea for your match.
Wow.
Like, and I'm going like, that's amazing. That's
You think
incredible.
about me when I'm not here?
Yeah, like,
Wow.
I had this really great idea already. Or like he said, oh, I've got this idea for a finish that, you know, so-and-so and so-and-so did in, you know, in 1988 or something. And it's like, I think you could do it. I think you could pull it off, you know, and all that sort of thing. It's like, that's a huge compliment to get that from a guy like him, you know.
So Bret's your guy. What's your Bret match?
My personal favorite is Bret and Perfect from King of the Ring, which is, I mean, look, there's so many Bret matches.
Of course.
But for
Bret
whatever
versus anybody.
reason, Bret and Perfect from King of the Ring 93, for whatever reason, that's the match that I watch more than any other Bret match. I think it's because it's like a perfect storm of like, I think that's the sort of match you can show to someone who's not a wrestling fan, right? And be like, watch this and tell me you didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
You know, that it wasn't like, it's rugged, it's believable, it's athletic, it tells a great story. It's like competitive. There's this sort of one-upsmanship, like, I'll do this to you and then you do this to me, and it's like, you don't have to be familiar with, there's no angle really going into it because it's part of a tournament. There's no real sort of the emotion is built during it, and that's what, you know, Kurt Hennig was such a master of his craft. Like, he could start like on the straight and narrow and then like little, you know, do a little thing. Like, there's a bit where early on where he holds onto the ropes to like break, you know, to get a rope break, and then just like throws a little, like, doesn't actually connect, but it's just enough to like make everybody know like, oh, this guy's kind of a jerk, you know.
Yeah.
He's not full on going like, oh, shut up, you know, not going like full on obnoxious pro wrestler yet. He's like just doing little things, and then, you know, it's like he lets Bret through the ropes and then gets him with a cheap shot and carries, but he doesn't hit one cheap shot and then like walk and talk, like, you know, he gets right down, you know, so then you're going like, oh my god, like he's sneaky but he's good, you know, which is kind of how you want to feel about a heel. Is you want him to be like, God, he is good, you know, but I want the other guy to beat, you know, I want the other guy to win, right? Like, and the way that match builds, right, builds and builds and builds, it stays so competitive all the way through, and then the finish with he comes in and it's like, again, Kurt being the one who's leaning a little bit, he's pretending to be hurt, he's milking injury so he can like, snatches a quick inside cradle, 1, 2, and then Bret flips it, 1, 2, 3. So it's like, you know, in the space of like 5 seconds, you're taking on this, oh no, yes, you know, like it's...
Dude, this is like a masterclass right now, because I think there's a lot of people that go, you're already a wrestler, you don't need to watch wrestling anymore because you are doing wrestling all the time. For you to talk about the minute details of this match that happened 30 years ago...
Well, that can only happen with truly great matches, though. It's like you can watch that match and every time you'll see something else that you didn't see before.
But that's incredible. And the fact that you just broke down all these tiny little things that none of us would have ever seen is amazing.
Well, maybe.
Stop being so humble. That's incredible.
Yeah, I love that match.
Clearly.
Yeah. I mean, look, and there's so many other Bret matches I love, but yeah, and I think the other thing I would add to that too is that for me, I've always been like a big picture guy. I've always been someone who looks at the entire thing. Like, I've always felt like a successful pro wrestling match on television is not a combination of the two wrestlers. It's a team effort between the two wrestlers, the referee, the agent, the booker, the TV director, the cameraman, the commentators, the announcers make such a difference, right? Like, and I think, you know, because I've wondered before, like, why did that match, out of all of Bret's matches, why is that the one that like resonates with me more? Why is that the one that I go back to more often than others? But I think a big part of it is because JR is on the call, you know, and not to take anything away from who else it would have been. Like, I guess at that period of time, I guess before him, it would have been Monsoon, you know, but it's like, Monsoon was phenomenal too.
Of course.
You know, but at that point, JR was coming in, like coming off, he was so full of energy, like from his, you know, because JR was, you know, when you know, peak JR was the best, right? But it was JR, Bobby the Brain Heenan, who to me, I think is probably the best overall talent in wrestling history.
Can do it all.
Like the most talented performer. Like in terms of like he could do anything. Manager, commentator, stick him on a talk show. He's there like making Bob Costas, who hates wrestling, and he's got Bob Costas just like eating out of his hand, right? Like Bobby Heenan. I could talk about Bobby Heenan for days. And you got Savage, who like the Savage, obviously a little polarizing when it comes to his commentating, but on that particular one, like you could tell that Savage loved the match. You could tell that all those guys were like enjoying it. Like there's a moment in that where like Bobby goes, "Man, what a great match!" Like it's almost like he's sort of forgotten that he's supposed to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like JR's so on his game, Heenan's so on his game. He just throws in just enough stuff in there about like, see, that's perfect. He learned that from me, like that's why he's where he is, because of my psychology. And they're, shut up, Bobby. Yeah. That doesn't even dignify a remark. Like they would just do it. Everything was perfect.
Yeah.
Like there was just the right amount of, like JR's calling the action.
Yeah.
And he's just so on his game, and again he's like digging into their past. Like, these two men are both second generation stars. Their fathers were big, brawling, rough. Like these guys are so technically sound. Really sort of digging into like all of the things that made that match so compelling. And they, they're painting the picture too, right? Like Bret and Perfect are the artists, right? But the commentators are the frame, and they're the ones sort of giving you the full picture. They're the ones putting the seasoning on this steak. It's just like the whole it all goes together, all of it. The
amount of passion you had telling that story. It's so good. When we talked last time, you told me the great story of how you and Mickie met. And then
I'm a looking and I'm a liking.
And then when I interviewed her, she told me her version of it, which is very similar.
What do you mean her version?
It's the same story. Come on.
Right.
What's one thing about Mickie James that fans may not know, but they would appreciate to know?
Gosh. That they wouldn't know?
They may know Mickie James, the performer.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they know this or not, but she's a wonderful mother, and we have a really good balance in the house. Like we've sort of, I think like part of a successful marriage, particularly once your parents is picking up the slack, for each other at certain times. Like there are times where it's like, I heard someone describing this and I wish I could remember who it was, but they were talking about how they described their energy levels with their spouse, right? Where they sort of went, man, I'm struggling today. I'm at like a 3. I need you to be at a 7.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And I wish I could remember who was saying that, because I thought that resonated with me so well, because like we never articulate it like that, but we have that same kind of, dynamic in that, like, I know that there are certain things that like she's going to be much more enthusiastic about doing than me, and vice versa. Like I'm the morning person. Like I wake up and I'm like alert and I'm ready and I'm focused. I want to sort of, I'm typically doing the school run and, breakfast and all that, but she's typically doing like the homework and, the like, cause by the time I get to the evening, like if I've been up and doing that and now like working a bit on the business, going to train, maybe been doing some video editing, whatever it may be. It's like, now I'm starting to decline. Right. So it's and we had that great sort of symbiotic sort of relationship, right? And a lot of nonverbal communication. But I don't know if that covers what your question necessarily, but she's a great wife and mother.
That actually really resonates with me now that I'm a new father.
Yes, congrats.
Thank you. And I feel every time I go in work, and for work for me a lot of times is doing something like this, which is awesome and great, and I get to share conversations with people.
You enjoy it, but it's still work.
Yes, but it's tough because I'm leaving my wife Rachel and my daughter Logan behind.
And no matter how much you love it or not, which is a blessing if you get to do what you love for a living, still it's a pull on your energy, right?
Yeah,
like
and
it requires energy.
Yeah, and that really speaks to me, the idea of like balancing that out, a 3 to a 7 or whatever it happens to be.
Like, hey, today I need you to, like, and knowing that at some point it's going to be the other way around. Like, all right, you're at a 3 today. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll be at a 7. Like I'll be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was shocked to find out, you mentioned it here, that you edit video, and you edited a lot of the stuff for the NWA.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you edit on, by the way?
Filmora is what I use mostly. Wondershare. Yeah, I'll tell you what.
It's usually Premiere or Final Cut.
I do have Premiere as well. I do use Premiere sometimes for like stuff that if it has to be a bit more intricate, like a little bit more advanced.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, man. I don't know why Filmora, but it's like the interface and for whatever reason, that their particular way of doing things just really resonates with my intuition. You know, it's like a lot of that was very intuitive with me, and I just found it was like right away it was very easy, like, and so I wasn't having to worry about like the technical as much as I could just focus on the creative, you know?
Yeah.
I know I say that to people when they go, oh, really? You know, like I said, you know, I'm by no means an expert, and I don't know, I'm sure people listening to this are being like, what? He doesn't use Final Cut? No,
I know. I use a program called Edius. Have you heard of Edius? No. The only reason I use that is because it was free when I worked at the TV station I worked at.
Gotcha.
They gave me a laptop that had Edius on it. And I went,
right.
Sure, sounds good.
Yeah.
I don't want to spend the money on buying a software if I don't have to.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know why Filmora just worked for me, but I just kind of, I got it and stuck it on and had to play around with it. And within a day, I sort of went, yeah, this is cool. Easy. I can use this well. And so yeah, that's, you know, and I'm an enthusiast, you know. So I'm certainly not a professional, right? Like
the reason I hired an editor eventually, and I started editing my first videos in 2000, the year 2000, when I was 17 years old. I hired an editor not long ago because I'm like a 4 out of 10 when it comes to editing.
Right.
Why not pay someone who's a 10 out of 10 at editing so I can focus on the thing that I'm more passionate about, which is this aspect of it. If someone watching this right now wants to use a coupon code at legacysubs.com, which one should they use?
Oh, wow.
Or should we create one right now?
We could do CVV.
There it is. CVV. Okay, great.
We'll get that active
Perfect.
right away afterwards. Legacysubs.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the top selling product?
Our bestseller, 2 bestsellers, are Test X9, a natural test booster, and Recovery PM, or sleep aid. I mean, we have people. We've launched a company a couple of years ago, and we're really, really pleased and very grateful to all our customers. I mean, we've served thousands of customers, you know, around the world. But the thing that's rewarding is that we have a really, really high retention rate. Like, we have a really high amount of people who come back over and over. So it's like, and the sleep aid in particular is one where people come back and go, man, I can't live without this stuff now. I love it. You know, it's really helped me. And, you know, sleep is such an under discussed element to really sort of unleashing your potential and really sort of unlocking a better sense of well-being and performance all around. Like, if you can get a consistent high quality sleep, like some people really are just astonished at how much it like improves everything else in your life. Like, suddenly your workouts are better, but you're also like, you feel more alert, you're happier, you know, you're sort of feel, and you know, suddenly you're going like, oh, I'm getting leaner, and I don't know, you know, because because your body's actually having a chance to sort of, everything you do when you're working out or focusing on your nutrition and stuff like that, you're giving your body all this data, you know, but then you have to give your body a chance to process the data and actually take the action. And that happens when you sleep. Yeah. So if your sleep's messed up, like none of that stuff is ever really going to fully, like testosterone. That's one of the reasons why when I started looking into this stuff, when I launched the company, I said, nobody has ever made the connection in terms of like supplementation with like testosterone boosting and sleep, because the majority of your testosterone release occurs while you sleep,
sleeping,
right? So I said, okay, the ultimate test stack is going to be Test X9, T Assist, which is more stuff to facilitate testosterone, but also to help inhibit estrogen and make sure that those levels stay where they're supposed to be. and then with the sleep aid. So like you do these two, then you follow it up with the sleep aid, so that the combination and all your, if you're working out and your diet's good and everything like that, when you go to sleep, you're getting the deep sleep that you need for those processes to actually kick in and take effect.
Yeah.
And that's that particular stack, the Ultimate Test Stack, is the one where guys have, given us feedback of like, oh my God, like it's totally changed my life. We had a guy who, and it's funny because I've never used this in like official advertising material because I feel like it would be a little bit bad faith, but we had a guy reach out to us and go, I had one child, and my wife and I had been trying for like 2 years to have a second child, and nothing worked, and we'd done fertility drugs, and we'd done this and done that, and I'd done all these things. And he goes, I'm just telling you, I started using the Ultimate Test Stack, and for after a few weeks later, like we find nothing hadn't changed anything else. Like that was the only thing I could think of that was different. And we have our second kid on the way. And I remember reading it, being like, "Babe, read this. Like, look at this guy," and then being like, "We can't use this. Like, we can't go like, hey, everyone, like,
right."
But it was, to see something like that, it's rewarding, and you go, okay, like, cool. And it's not like, I don't feel like a snake oil salesman, right? Like it's like,
yeah. So now that everybody is sold because their test is going to be boosted and they're going to sleep better, so many people that are listening to this or watching this are going, oh my gosh, I can sleep better. Oh my gosh. Thank you. CVV will get them how much percent off?
20%.
20% off. Oh my God. We didn't even talk about this beforehand.
20%.
There CVV, 20% off.
CVV, legacysups.com.
There it is. I don't think I was asking you this question, but I end every conversation with the same question now. And by the way, thank you for such a great conversation.
You're welcome.
Thank you for inviting me into your beautiful home here.
Happy to have you here.
Introducing me to your lovely dog, Pixie, that's behind you.
Pixie Carter, yeah.
That's not actually her name, right?
Not a real name.
Just Pixie.
I just add that extra bit on the boys.
But thank you for this great conversation, and I'm excited to see what's next for you. I feel like you've got a lot left to go. You've got a lot more matches left too.
I appreciate that. Well, we'll see. It's nice to know that there are options. That's the thing I'm grateful for.
Well, and you lead me right into our next question, because gratitude's such an important part of my life. What are 3 things in your life that you're grateful for right now?
Well, very right off the bat, I have a happy, healthy son. That I have a great marriage, and opportunities, because it's very easy. I think sometimes I think especially recently, and in the culture that's sort of being fostered by, bad faith media and social media and things like that, is that like victimhood becomes a bit of a currency. Everyone wants to sort of go, I'm a victim of this, and it sort of gets traded in this way of like, it's not my fault, right? Like, and it's really easy. And look, in our business, it's cutthroat. There's not that many spots, right? There's a lot of people trying to get like a very small number of spots. And it's very easy to start focusing on all the things that didn't happen for you. And, I try to remind myself of like, think of all the things that did happen for me, right? Like, for example, if I'd have, been one of those guys that was fortunate and got like picked up by WWE really early on and stuck in the developmental system, and then, groomed and, put on TV, maybe I'd be a multimillionaire by now, which would be wonderful. But I also, I wouldn't know the wrestling business the way I do, because, I'm not saying this is a good thing or a bad thing, but, the wrestling business is one thing and WWE is a different thing, right? And I've seen guys come out of WWE who have had that sort of scenario, and they're lost at sea when they leave, because they don't know, because they don't really know the wrestling business, And so I'm sort of go, well, man, I'm in my 30s, and I hear these conversations and people discuss all these sort of really significant figures in wrestling history, and I get to go, oh, I've worked with them, Oh, I know him. I've met him, Jim Cornette, Jerry Jarrett, Vince Russo, Bruce Pritchard, like all sorts of different important historical, figures in our industry. And because of my sort of very, wild ride of sort of different opportunities and things that come along, and it's like I've got to work with some, even Billy, when I look back at my the sort of tapestry of my life and my career stuff, it's like to be able to, it's a pretty interesting tapestry, So I got to work with this guy and that guy, and I did this and I did that, and so I don't focus on the things that didn't happen for me. I focus on the things that did, and I focus on the things that will. You have to be ready to. You just have to be ready to make the most of anything that does come along, like the NWA thing, or like other things like that. If you're always willing to have an open mind and an open heart and be ready to tackle something head on with conviction, it's like great things can happen. You just have to you have to stay positive and be ready. I think that's a great way to end this. But thank you again. Man. It's always so good to see you. Yeah, likewise. And I love how you want to talk about having an open mind and an open heart. I feel like every time we share a conversation, that's what we get. So I appreciate that. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Oh, thank you, sir. Thanks, buddy.